Are you just fully immersed in playoff basketball, or are you still watching TVs or movies?
I am fully immersed in playoff basketball, but I wouldn't be me if I'm not also watching TVs and movies. I've watched Sinners now, and I binged the entire Netflix show, The Four Seasons, with Steve Carell and Tina Fey.
Okay, so what do you think about the Four Seasons?
You know what? Have you watched
spoilers, I guess, because I've watched the whole thing, but I'm sure that we shouldn't drop any spoilers.
Okay, I won't spoil anything. I will just say, while it is a very funny show, it's not just straight comedy. So if you're going to watch it, just a heads up, it's a little depressing too. Like, it's a little sad. I shouldn't say depressed. Well, there's some sad. It's like a mix of comedy, drama, make you sad, make you feel good. I think it's a very good show, and I think it's definitely worth watching. It's just, you look at the cast and you think, oh, this is just gonna be straight comedy. It's not exactly that.
No, it's like real life experiences. And so the drama is, to me, something that resonates with maybe an older crowd, like adults who are in that stage of their life.
Agreed. And it feels very real. Like, I related, unfortunately, after what you just said about, being for an older crowd, I unfortunately related to a lot of it. So, yeah, it was definitely for, we'll just say the 40-ish crowd. We'll just say that.
Welcome back to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, publisher of Daily Thunder, and I'll be your host today. Alongside me is Daily Thunder beat writer Brandon Rahbar. Brandon, how you feeling after Game 2 versus how you felt after Game 1?
I think I can speak for every single Thunder fan listening right now. Much, much better after Game 2 than Game 1. If you wanted to see what the Thunder were made of, like Shea said after Game 1, I think that Game 2, the response couldn't have gone any better than it did.
That's right. Well, let's take us back to that headspace of Game 1. So try not to think about Game 2 in the context that the Game 2 result probably provides today versus Monday night, Tuesday morning. How were you feeling after Aaron Gordon shot that dagger and, stole one from the Thunder in Game 1?
I mean, yeah, you said it exactly right. They stole one. It was a heartbreaker for the Thunder because the Thunder controlled the entire game. The Thunder were clearly the better team that night for 47 minutes and 50 seconds. And it was that last, 10 to 12 seconds where things obviously went south. Maybe a couple minutes before that, it was trending towards that way. But look, the Thunder, they were up basically 8 to 12 points, it seemed like, the entire game. And then it was a perfect storm of anything that could go wrong for the Thunder went wrong between, I'm not going to pick on anybody, but just like the things that stand out, like the Chet missed dunk, which, he makes 99.9% of the time, to the fouling up three and the timing of the fouling up three, like some missed free throws. Russell Westbrook, making the right read on that last second play. Aaron Gordon hitting a three at the buzzer, with closing out with Chet's long arms in front. Like, it was the perfect storm of anything that could go wrong, went wrong. But it took all that for the Nuggets to win because the Thunder were in control of that game the entire time before that.
Yeah, and I think about what we talked about last week and the point that we were making that the Thunder are the better team. They're the more talented team. They're the deeper team. And so their margin of error is much greater than the Nuggets. Because I don't think the Thunder played a great game on Monday. There were clear signs of rust. The shooting was not very good at all, especially from three and especially early. They started off just awful from three-point line early in the game. So we saw the Thunder make more mistakes and not play closer to their full potential. And that was enough to carry a double-digit lead throughout most of the game. But then the mistakes kind of compounded in the fourth quarter, and in that fourth quarter, the Nuggets really didn't make mistakes and allowed them to make a run, come back into that game. I think there was like a late 11-0 run to close out and make where they took the lead late in the fourth. And so, yeah, you look at the 3.5 quarters of that game, the Thunder were the better team, and because they were so much better, their mistakes they could overcome and maintain that lead, but there were just too many mistakes down the stretch.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And, it's crazy because the Nuggets out-rebounded the Thunder by 20 that night. They got so many offensive rebounds. They got 21 offensive rebounds, so many second-chance points. Jokic went for 42, 22, and 6, and he had 13 free throws. The Thunder ended up losing that game on a buzzer-beating 3 by Aaron Gordon, despite being out-rebounded by 20, despite Jokic going for 40 and 20 and shooting 13 free throws. So, if you look at the context of the game, it was pretty incredible. Like, the Thunder won in so many areas and lost it in just, like, the craziest scenario. Like, just, I don't know, the percentage chance that you're going to win a game as the game is going out. Like, I think it was at 99% at one point the Thunder were going to win. And then, of course, as we see in this entire second round for home teams, they had victory snatched from the jaws of defeat or whatever, whatever the saying is. They're on the bad end of it. And it was just the feeling that the Thunder were the better team and they just let one go. My feeling, it was the correct strategy to foul up 3, but the timing of it was the mistake. They did it too early. They left too much time. Fouling up 3 when there's like 2 or 3 seconds left, that's the strategy, and they were doing it much too early.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what people want to hear, a discussion about the fouling strategy and starting that with 13, 14 seconds to go in the game. Coach Dagnall took kind of ownership of the decision. I'm not sure he ever came out and said it was a mistake. I think he said, well, yeah, you look at the results and it certainly looks like a mistake, right? I think that's sort of the point of what he was making. But, it's my decision. It's on me. The result is, my responsibility. But, media, fans, Reddit, everybody said, what the heck are you doing? Fouling with 13, 14 seconds to go, and then immediately fouling, not letting 1 or 2 seconds run off the clock before fouling. Kate, how do you explain that strategy?
Well, okay, so the strategy is sound. I get the strategy because the idea is if you're up 3, if you foul the other team, if they hit both free throws, you're still up 1. And then, there's no time left. You inbound the ball, and they got to foul you. And then whether you make your free throws or not, they're not going to have any time on their next inbounds to do anything. They're going to have like a full court heave or whatever. So the odds, the probability are that you're going to win. But that's if there's like 2 seconds left in the game, not if there's 12 seconds, 10 seconds. Then there's too many variables going on. Then it almost becomes a free throw contest. So I do think that the strategy was sound. It was just the timing of it. So yeah. I just think that, like, in hindsight, I know people were questioning the strategy. I don't think it was the strategy. I just think it was the timing. And as Dagnall talked about, they're just so locked into that strategy and that philosophy of fouling up 3. But then, the game circumstance and the game clock has to come into play, and you don't do it until there's like 2 seconds left. Let them dribble out some time first.
Well, and I'm going to be a little more critical and kind of get your response on this, because I agree the strategy is sound. When you are up 3 in the waning seconds of a game, you foul because that opponent is not going to have enough time to get enough possessions when you play the free throw game. With 12, 13 seconds left to go in the game, there is enough time to play possessions, and you're putting so much pressure on your team to not miss any foul shots. And while I guess you're likewise putting some pressure on them to make their foul shots, what you're doing is you're giving them extra possessions with the clock stopped when you are fouling that early. So I guess I hate to question too much the last year's Coach of the Year and this year's. I think he finished 4th in Coach of the Year voting because he's a great coach. But did he overthink this one?
Yeah, I think that and Dagnall kind of alluded to it that that's been their philosophy, but they need to look at the timing of it, and I think that's everything here. I think it's the timing. I think the strategy is sound. If, like you said, it's in the waning seconds, if there's 2 or 3 seconds left, yes, that's a good call. But if there's 12 seconds left, that's a totally different ball game, because then they're also going to immediately foul you, and then it does become a free throw contest, and there's a lot of pressure on your players to make those free throws. So yeah, I think to me what it boils down to is I get it. I get the strategy, but it's got to be in the last couple seconds of the game to me going forward. And I think that I think if they were to go back, that would be the thing that they would change. I think they'd stick with it, but you would especially after Shea has that dunk and Jokic is on the bench and they inbound to Aaron Gordon. He's so far away from the basket. You let him dribble it. Maybe even let's see how that possession plays out, because Jokic isn't on the floor. But if anything, you can foul 2 seconds left there before they can get a 3-point shot up, and it's a totally different game.
Yeah, and that probably led to more people pulling out their hair than any other moment. Because when Shea put that dunk in, it was a great play designed on the inbounds by the Thunder. Shea gets a wide open dunk that really should have sealed it. It felt like the Thunder sealed the victory with that dunk. And then, with Jokic on the bench to immediately foul Gordon on the opposite side of the basket, I guess I kind of wonder, hey, the strategy is a strategy and we're dedicated to that strategy and we do not think about the game situations. Is that how it played out?
Yeah, I think so. And, this is something that I think that you go back and you maybe rethink your strategy. And again, I don't think it's the strategy. I think it's the timing. I think that, you go back and look at film and you're like, okay, yes, in this circumstance, we're locked into this strategy, but let's let the time go down. We don't do it immediately. We don't foul immediately in this circumstance. And I would imagine if this situation were to come up again in these playoffs, they would likely still foul up 3, but they'll wait until it's the very last seconds of the game instead of doing it, with 12 seconds left.
Well, let's get into some of the performances as well, because, as I was saying at the top, I don't think the Thunder were playing anywhere near their peak, and some of the key contributors in the playoffs in that first round sweep were not on their game. So I think J-Dub had his worst performance of the playoffs so far this season. He shot just 5 of 20 and 2 of 9 from 3. I think he was 1 of 7 in the fourth quarter, so he really struggled in the crunch time. Chet Holmgren didn't have his best game ever. I think there were times, that defensively Chet was struggling a little bit. And then, of course, the missed dunk and the missed free throws. And then Chet, I think, takes a ton of ownership for that. I think you could tell post-game that he really felt like he let the team down there. You look at Dort. Dort was a minus 21 in the box score in this game, and while Shea had a great night overall, scoring 33 points, it wasn't his most efficient night. That kind of said, who do you think's performance stood out to you the most in you wish they would have stepped up to the moment? Because we'll talk about Caruso, who was probably the player of the game, and if he's not on the court, it might be worse for the Thunder. Shea, Chet, J-Dub, who do you think needed to turn things around the most in Game 2?
Yeah, so Caruso absolutely was the player of the game, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But yeah, I thought that I hate to say J-Dub because I felt like he had a solid game overall. He had 16, 7 and 4, but he also had 2 steals. He had 2 blocks. The thing is, he went 5 for 20 from the field. He went 2 and 9 from 3, but I don't think they were bad shots. I just don't think he was hitting. So I'm going to select J-Dub just because I think that he got, a lot of, I saw on social media, he got some ire, and I'm just like, I don't think Dub necessarily had a bad game, and he actually kind of talked about this after Game 2. He said, I was aggressive and I didn't shoot it the way I wanted to shoot it, but I got to live with those results. And I know it sounds ridiculous to say after a 5 of 20 game, but I don't necessarily think he had a bad game. He had a bad shooting game. But I thought his overall game was fine. So that's what I would say. But obviously he's got to shoot it better for the Thunder to advance in these playoffs and to get to where they want to go in these playoffs. And he did turn around and shoot it much better in game 2.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about Alex Caruso now because I want to give my props to the bench. And I think a big driver of the Thunder having the lead that they had throughout most of the game were the non-Jokic minutes for the Nuggets, or when it was more of the bench players for the Nuggets versus the bench players for the Thunder, because the Thunder bench was really, really good, led largely by Alex Caruso, who had a, kind of the kind of game that you were like, this is exactly why we have Alex Caruso on the team. Because not only did he score the ball well, did he shot the ball well, but he was a menace defensively. He was everywhere.
Yeah, Caruso was outstanding. This is exactly why you go out and get Alex Caruso. And he talked about this, how he feels like his play correlates to this time of the year, to the postseason, and how he can't necessarily play this brand of basketball for 82 games, although he plays something close to this. He does take it to another level in the playoffs, and we've seen that. And, man, game 1, he was spectacular. I saw, like StatMuse tweeted out that nobody in playoff history had ever had a game that Alex Caruso had where he had 20 points, 5 steals, 2 blocks, 6 assists. I don't know what the exact number was, 2 blocks. The point is, he was outstanding. He was everywhere. And the Thunder won his minutes by a lot. He was a plus 13 in 26 minutes. So in the 22 minutes he didn't play, the Thunder were a minus 15. He was everywhere. He was the Thunder's best player that night.
Yeah, 100%. Let's talk more about the defensive strategy on Jokic generally. I think we kind of, or at least I expected Hartenstein to start on Jokic, but the team started with Chet on Jokic. Do you like the way the team defended? Chet and Hart both got into foul trouble while defending Jokic, and it looked like, Dagnall was trying to make sure one of them was on the court at all times, so he was staggering their minutes quite a bit. There wasn't as much twin tower, double big lineup. So think about the strategy the Thunder deployed in game 1. Did you like it?
Yeah, I was fine with it, honestly. Look, I know this sounds ridiculous to say because he had 42 points, but it did take him 29 shots to get there. He was 15 of 29, which honestly for Jokic isn't, his typical percentage. And he took 13 free throws, and I think that was the bigger deal. And, some of that, I thought there were some calls. He got to the line that, maybe are tic-tac or questionable. But I thought that the defense on Jokic for the most part in game 1 was fine. It was the fact that, I thought it was more harmful for the Thunder that Gordon also went for 22, Murray also went for 21, and Westbrook also went for 18, and all those guys did theirs pretty efficiently. So I think it was the combination of those 4 more so than it was just Jokic's big stat line.
Well, I think maybe it's time to move on to game 2, which was a very different game than game 1. But, of course, coming out of game 1, the vibes were not good. I think the fans were very upset, especially about the way that the game was lost. And, of course, being down 0-1 doesn't feel good when you have home court advantage. And, of course, being down 0-2 would be devastating to this team and its playoff prospects. But what I kept telling myself after the game to not overreact to the result is that this is a team that, up to that point, had gone, I think, 72-14. And to win the finals, this team that had won 72 games to date, including the playoffs, just needed to go 12-8 the rest of the playoffs, and they win a championship. Now, of course, the timing of those losses matter, but that's the record they need, is a 12-8 record. And this is a team that won 80% of its games this year. So I felt like there was going to be a turnaround game. And certainly I believe the talent disparity was evident in game one. If just a few more shots get made, if execution is a little bit tighter, the Thunder were going to take game two. I did not expect the result. So what were your thoughts leading into game two?
Yeah, I thought the Thunder were going to win this one. I felt pretty confident that the Thunder were going to come out desperate, just like SGA said in postgame. They were desperate, and I thought that they would throw a pretty big punch back at the Nuggets, especially, not only being down 0-1, being at home, losing the way that they lost game one. It wasn't, obviously it was the fact that they lost game one, but it's even more so how they lost game one. I just think they wanted to get that taste out of their mouth, and they came out so strong. Like you, I expected a win. I expected about a 10 to 12 point win. I thought that they would win comfortably, but I never imagined a 43-point win. I never imagined a playoff all-time record of most points in a half, and they scored 87 points in the first half.
Well, and I want to segue a little bit because we were talking about how the Thunder were defending Jokic in game one. They defended him a little bit different in game two because Hart did start out defending Jokic in game two, and I think Chet spent less time defending Jokic in game two than he did in game one. J. Will got quite a few minutes, I think, to try to keep Chet and Hart out of foul trouble, and he actually did a great job defending Jokic in that game, and I think he deserves a shout-out for that. But the strategy was a little bit different, employing a little more size on Jokic to try to keep him out of the paint, make him a little bit more uncomfortable. And there was a lot more help defense in game two.
Yeah, I think that was the noticeable thing, was the help defense in game two. And that kind of goes into how the Thunder have played, most of the year, just swarming bodies and long arms and hands everywhere, active hands. And so, Jokic would get it. I think that the Thunder were much more physical, putting a physical player like Isaiah Hartenstein on him. And then to your point, when J. Will came in, he was so impressive. He was so physical. He played him so strong and so hard. It was fun because you could hear the crowd get louder when J. Will was matched up with Jokic one-on-one. J. Will is already a fan favorite, and anytime he comes in, the crowd gets excited. But he came in and immediately was so physical with Jokic on the first couple of possessions. And then at one point, Jokic ends up kind of trying to back him down, and the crowd just gets so pumped because J. Will isn't having it, and he doesn't let him score on. So shout out to J. Will. But yeah, I think between the physicality and the help defense, the swarming bodies, also trying to take away his passing options, I think that they did a great job. He only had 6 assists, and he had 6 turnovers. He now has more turnovers than assists in this series so far. So not only did they do a great job on the help defense and the physicality, but they're doing a good job trying to limit his playmaking as well. I just thought game one, I said they defended him fine just because he wasn't hyper efficient and it took a lot of shots and a lot of free throws to get to his points. But then game two was so much better and so much more physical and so much more active.
Yeah, and I think a key part is when you take away Jokic in that way, when you make him uncomfortable, when you're so physical with him so he can't get to his spots, it, of course, grinds the Nuggets offense to a halt. But also, I think that's what led to so many turnovers. You mentioned Jokic had 6 turnovers himself. As a team, the Nuggets had 21 turnovers, and it led to 34 Thunder points. And this is one of the better teams in the NBA, the Nuggets are, at not turning the ball over. And with the way the Thunder were shooting and the way that they were defending, of course, this was the result you were going to get. But hopefully, the Thunder sort of unlocked something into how they can defend the Nuggets and Jokic primarily going into Game 3. And I guess, would you agree we're going to see consistent J. Will minutes?
Yeah, I don't know how you don't play him now after seeing the way he played him in this game. I think you got to use – and we've seen this from J. Will, like in regular season matchups against Jokic. He's done a really, really good job, I think. He just brings this physicality. He's kind of got a lower center of gravity, even though he doesn't have the height or the length of Chet or even Hartenstein. He's got this like strength and lower center of gravity. I think that can bother Jokic a little bit. And he's just not afraid to mix it up. And and shout out to Jay Will again, because he was kind of going through it there for a minute. He got an elbow to the face from Russell Westbrook, and then just like 1 minute later, Jokic just kind of like plays leapfrog on his back. So my man was not only, coming in and making a difference, he was also kind of getting beat up. But man, Jay Will played so well.
Let's move to the offense. Of course, the offense was really humming. It has to be at peak performance if you're going to score a NBA record-setting playoff performance with 87 points in the first half. What do you think the difference was in Game 1 versus Game 2? I don't think it was purely just the shots going in. I do think there was a different urgency and style that the Thunder were playing with as far as offense.
Yeah, the urgency was certainly there. I think they did a little bit better job of trying to hunt matchups on the offensive end. Shea was using his gravity, making all the right reads. Like, Shea's got more assists and fewer turnovers in this series so far than Jokic does, which is huge. But Shea, obviously, he was incredible, by the way. He was 11 of 13 from the field, a perfect 11-11 from the free throw line. The Thunder actually scored on every single SGA attempt, because the only 2 shots that he missed were offensive rebounds that were put back or tipped in. So obviously shots going down, but I think they did a better job of kind of hunting some mismatches on the offensive end. And I think that, like the always kind of touching the paint and the passing and playmaking in the paint, everybody kind of looking for each other. Whether it was rust, whether it was, kind of jitters, your first, second round playoff game and the home crowd and all those things. The offense was fine in Game 1, but man, Game 2, they were just so hyper efficient. I just think that they played more to their own identity. The playmaking, the ball just kind of bouncing around, and then the defense and the turnovers leading to transition and easy buckets.
And on Shea in particular, in Game 1, Jokic did have that monster performance, and he really stuffed the stat sheet. And of course, we're still waiting for the results of the MVP winner, and it is down to SGA versus Jokic. But SGA had an answer to the big Jokic. I know the votes are already in, but it's great to see on national TV with this huge audience in the playoffs, SGA respond to, while a good night, not his best night, by really just playing near perfection. And in basically 3.5 quarters of play, doing what he did. And I think he ultimately had a plus 51 in plus minus, which is the highest ever recorded in an NBA playoff game. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, insane. To be a plus 51 all-time record. And on the same night, Jokic had a minus 36, which was the worst of his career. So we had Jokic's worst career, and then SGA breaking an all-time playoff record with a plus 51. Shea was just unbelievable. And some of the shots he was making were just like classic Shea, like the finishes at the rim and the degree of difficulty and touch and smoothness that he finished with, the separation that he got. I just thought he was outstanding. But the entire starting lineup was ridiculous. You go through, Chet was a plus 34, Jada was a plus 23, Hartenstein plus 19, Shea plus 51, and Lou Dort a plus 34. So just the starters were dominant. And, the Nuggets, even though this was a blowout, they played their main guys for basically a full 3 quarters. Like, they didn't get any rest. You would think in a blowout game, I know they didn't play the fourth quarter, but when Jokic is playing 32 minutes and Murray's playing 31 minutes, Gordon 27, then 26 for Brown, 25 for Porter Jr., and 22 for Westbrook, they played a hefty dose. And, is the fatigue thing going to eventually catch up with them since they just came off a 7-game series? I know that everybody was talking about that Game 1, but you would think, that mounts up more and more. And I was just surprised that they didn't pull their starters earlier.
Yeah, I think that was a question a lot of people were making, and the joke was when Jokic fouled out, he was pulling himself out of the game.
Yeah, it seemed like it. It seemed like he was intentionally trying to get that 6th foul because he was done. He's like, all right, Adelman, if you're not going to to pull me out, I'm going to pull myself out.
Well, some other key performances by the Thunder. You mentioned J-Dub was the player you thought needed the best bounce-back game in Game 2, and I think he had a pretty good bounce-back game in 17, 7, and 4. He shot the ball much better, and he just, to me, looked like he was playing with a little more freedom in Game 2.
Yeah, he looked more comfortable. I do think he was playing with a little bit more freedom. Obviously, the efficiency was much better. His playmaking, I thought, was really key. 7 assists for him, 8 for Shea. They shared the ball really, really well. They used their gravity. Obviously, defensively, J-Dub always brings it. But yes, 6 of 11 for 17 points. The thing is, he still hasn't shot well from 3. He was 0 of 3. Tonight, I believe, is 2 of 9 from 3 in Game 1. So now he's 2 of 12 so far in this series. So I would actually take that as a positive because that means he's due. We know that J-Dub is a good three-point shooter. We have a large sample size now of 3 seasons to go by. He's a good three-point shooter. So eventually these shots from 3 are going to fall. So he's due there. And he needs to keep shooting, and I know he will. Chet bounced back in a big way from three-point land, 2 of 3. And after those missed free throws at the end of the game, I thought it was very fitting that Chet went 7 of 7, perfect from the free throw line in this game.
Not only that, but he hit the 2 free throws at the end of the first half to give the Thunder the record for the most points in a half in NBA playoff history. So shouts to Chet. I was going to say that, he was a guy who needed to have a good bounce back game after Game 1. I think he did that. He didn't shoot the ball really, really well. He was just 3 of 8. But to me, he was just very, very active and just played. To me, his play was so much better.
Yeah, he had 2 blocks. He had 2 steals. And it feels like he got the opposite of Jaren Jackson Jr. in the blocks department, because I feel like watching the game, it seemed like he had 4 or 5. He was just deterring and altering so many shots at the rim. He was very active and 15 points on 8 shots. I thought that his rebounding was big because that was such a big talking point. That was the one thing that they could control in Game 2, and it was very obvious that was an emphasis from Game 1 to Game 2 when they got out-rebounded by 20 in Game 1, and then they actually out-rebound the Nuggets in Game 2, and Chet was a big part of it. He had 11 in only 26 minutes, and a lot of those were like contested rebounds. They weren't like fake rebounds. He was going up and getting them this game.
Yeah, and that was a huge difference between Game 2 and Game 1 is how much better the Thunder were rebounding the ball. They were giving up second chance point after second chance point against the Nuggets, and while I think they were able to overcome it through 3 quarters, that allowed the Nuggets to stay a little bit closer, because if the Nuggets don't get 87 million second chance points like they did in Game 1, it might be a 25-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and it's a very different game in Game 1. But much better job on the boards, and I think Chet was a big part of that. One other player I want to talk about is Isaiah Hartenstein, who has been consistent in these first 2 games, and I think he's doing exactly what the Thunder want him to do. He's been very critical to the success the Thunder have had this series.
Yeah, he has been. I think his defense on Jokic obviously has been very big, but like in this game, he had 14 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, so that playmaking from the high post, so nice. A steal, a block, and he was 6 of 7, so very efficient. He had his floater, his little push floater going. It's so money, and it's honestly kind of a cheat code. It's kind of a bailout when a possession is kind of going awry and the other team is playing good defense and Shea or Dub or Chet can't get a shot off that they want. Just kind of dump it to Hartenstein and let him do his little push floater because he can get it pretty much any time. And it was on last night, and I think it's such an efficient shot. It's a really really good kind of bailout go to. And yeah, Hartenstein's played his role perfectly.
Well, the last topic I want to bring up is Russell Westbrook. So Game 1, he did get his traditional ovation when he checked into the game, and I think fans sort of treated him with the respect that Westbrook is accustomed to being treated with in Oklahoma City. In Game 2, there were boos. What happened?
There were boos. I think it was a combination of a few things. I think the fact that the Thunder crowd realized that they gave Russ his due huge ovation in Game 1, and hearing Russ talk about it, appreciating it, but also saying it's the playoffs, so, love, both ways. It's mutual and all those things. But after you lose game one, and Russ playing such a huge part of that win. Russ was great in game one. And by the way, he was the Nuggets' best player in game two. He has been a huge X factor for them. They don't win that Clippers series without Russ. So shout out to Russ. He's been great. But I think that, Thunder fans realized, hey, we're desperate too. Like Shea talked about, the team is going to be desperate, but Loud City was desperate too. And it was like, hey, we got to support our guys. We love Russ, but Russ came in, the Thunder were on a huge run, and Russ was the one that ended that run. He hit a jumper, and the crowd was so into it at that point and so loud. The crowd was incredible last night. J-Dub said it was the loudest he's ever heard Paycom. They hit 110 decibels last night. It was outstanding work from Loud City. But I think that Russ comes in and he breaks that run that the Thunder were on. And so after the game one loss, he's got his ovation. Now it was on. So the crowd booed. And then Russ got so physical and he got into a dust-up with current fan favorite Jay Will. And so there was some boos there. And I don't think it wasn't like a hateful boo. It was like kind of like you're still our guy type of booing. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference when the Thunder crowd boos like Draymond or KD when they were booing Russ. I think it was like all love of the game. When the series is over, Jersey in the rafters, he's still Thunder legend. But for this game, I think the Thunder fans realized, hey, we got to go for our guys. We're down 0-1. We need this game.
Well, to close this out, I'm going to give you an opportunity to amend your predictions now that we have the additional data points of game one and game two. So now we are looking at a 5-game series with the Nuggets having home court advantage. We're guaranteed a game 5 in Oklahoma City. How do you see the series playing out?
I originally said Thunder in 6, so I do want to stick with that, but game 3 is so big, and I know everybody always talks about game 3 being big, but it's such a huge swing game because whoever loses, so much pressure is going to be on the team that loses in game 4. And you can look at this game 2 in two different ways. You can look at it as, hey, the Thunder are clearly the better team, and they're going to seize momentum going into game 3 despite it being in Denver, and they're going to run away with this series and win it. But you can also look at it as, hey, Denver did their job. It's still 1-1 despite the point differential, despite what happened in game 2, and they have a great home court as well, and now they do have home court advantage the rest of the series, so they're favored. So I guess all that to say, it feels like a 7-game series now. I think the Thunder are the better team. But you got to win at least one in Denver. I think this Thunder team will win one in Denver. Can they win 2? Yes, they can. Will they? I don't know. I would predict they go 1-1 in Denver, and then win game 5 in OKC. And so I guess I'll stick with my original prediction of Thunder in 6, and they close it out in Denver. But doesn't it feel like a 7-game series, or do you feel like the Thunder seized momentum and they got this in 6 or 5 or whatever?
Yeah, I really want to see how game 3 plays out, because if the Thunder dominate game 3 in the way that they play to their capabilities, maybe not with another 43-point stomping, but a nice 15, 20-point win, I think the Nuggets might be done for. I think
Agreed.
The Thunder closed it out in game 5 at home. And so game 3 is going to be the indicator of how the series goes. If it's a close, hard-fought game, then yeah, I could definitely see this one going 7.
Yeah, agreed with that. That's why game 3 is so big either way. And you really, really hope the Thunder go in and make a statement and win that game. And like you said, if they dominate that game, I'm with you. The series would be over. If they win a close one, maybe we're looking at a long series. But if the Thunder win game 3, so big to win home court advantage out back, and then you put all the pressure on the Nuggets for game 4.
Yeah, and I hope that the Thunder come out with urgency in game 3 the same way they came out in game 2, because I think the secret to the series and winning these games is establishing some dominance and a lead against the Nuggets starters. Because if the Nuggets have to go to their bench, they're going to lose, right?
Yeah.
They need to win the starter minutes, because they're never going to win the bench minutes. And so if the Thunder just kind of come out hot early and take away any kind of ability for the Nuggets starters to keep pace or take a lead, I don't give the Nuggets a whole lot of hope to win the game.
Agreed. And I wonder if the Grizzlies game 3, the first game in Memphis, will be a talking point at all, because, the Thunder just flat dominated Memphis in OKC games 1 and 2. And then they go to Memphis, and that game 3, that first half, obviously the Grizzlies laid it on the Thunder. Thunder come back and win in the second half. But I wonder if that'll be a talking point, like, hey, we cannot let that happen in Denver, like what happened in Memphis. You got to go and fight with the same desperation and urgency that you did in game 2 when you get to Denver in game 3.
Yeah, 100% agree. And so, yeah, if the Thunder can win the first and third quarters, they're going to win the game.
Agreed. Yes. Coming out hot and not letting the Nuggets take any sort of lead, in any significant way in the first quarter will be absolutely huge.
Okay, well, a lot to look forward to on Friday night. I'm going to have some late coffee to stay up for a 9 p.m. or probably 9:15 when we really talk about it tip-off. But I am ready. I am excited. And that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Thunder podcast. I'm John Napier, host of the podcast, and he's Brandon Rahbar, Daily Thunder beat writer. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Thunder podcast on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any future episodes. And if you like what you hear, do us a favor, leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll be back in your feed soon.